Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Current radio show. And I'm afraid, just like one of my colleagues earlier in the week, we have some technical difficulties tonight. And we're hoping to overcome them in some way. Julie, if you're listening, I cannot pick you up until I get this technical issue sorted out. And we're going to start with the State of the Union, I think, tonight. Belford, would you like to discuss the State of the Union?
Yes, I would. Is this the correct? Okay. The State of the Union speech has more promise than concrete benefits that can be readily demonstrated. Let me begin with the President's proposal that he raised the minimum wage for federal contract employees to $10.10. That's a worthy goal, and it's within his right as president to do that for that particular group of workers. But ironically, the Department of Labor sometimes requires a higher minimum wage than that. And, of course, there's a question of whether municipalities and states will have the combination of incentive and financial resources to follow suit. And then there's the roadblock of the Congress. If the use of executive power antagonizes the Republican factions to the point where they resist, then there's going to be a political complication in that nothing will happen for income inequality better than just the raising of the minimum wage for federal contract employees. So I think it's an important first step, but I wonder whether the political fallout will ultimately undermine Obama's effort. Then of course there's immigration, and while in certain parts of the country immigration is seen as an economic benefit because labor will be more abundant and will be willing to work for lesser wages, there's the whole question of the path to citizenship for undocumented and or illegal immigrants. And that will lead to a stalemate that in the Congress that I'm not certain executive power decisions can circumvent. What do you think, Margaret?
I'm sorry, I'm still working out the technical issues. I can't take part. You can move on to Christie if you want. I saw he had ended the Sandy conference.
Well, the interesting development that I followed today involves New Jersey Senator Steve Sweeney, who has promised to shut down the New Jersey state government if Chris Christie reneges on a pension payment that he promised to go into effect between 2011 and 2018. The percentages are very high, digging their way out of an $86 billion hole. The 2011 to 2018 revision calls for the state to phase in added payments through 2018 when the state's contribution would reach what is needed to preserve its long-term health. But Christie locked himself in. He promised to develop the pension program, not just in terms of passing oral promise and conversation. He signed a law, and that has given Sweeney leverage to say that if the upcoming budget in New Jersey does not show consistency with the legislation Christie has signed, that Sweeney will not just take a strong position of condemnation, he will not approve the budget, and the entire budget, and that will shut down the flow of money in New Jersey for its state operations pretty much completely. And that's not all. Today's research indicates that there's another manipulation of a governorship in New Jersey, this time Belleville, New Jersey, where a senior citizens center had been promised financing. And in the vicinity of $6 million.
Say hi to Julie.
Oh, Julie, are you on?
I'm here.
Yes, well, can you help me with the name of the mayor of Belleville? Because in the article that I was researching, that name is not given. Instead, the name of Essex County Executive DiVincenzo
I think
was
you're
given.
looking at the same article I'm looking at on NJ.com. Give me a second to research it. You can keep talking about it, and I'll research it while you're doing
yes,
that.
Yes, this is NJ.com.
Okay, let me.
Yes,
I know it's out there somewhere. I'll find his name. You just go ahead and talk about the story while I look for it.
Well, the story alleges that the money, $6 million for the Senior Citizen Center, went forward, and shortly thereafter, the mayor of Belleville endorsed Christie. So the pattern of intimidation and threats, or at least the pattern of conditioning benefits, financial awards, grants to towns only if there's a return political favor for Christie continues. And that pattern is obviously widening.
That mayor's name is Raymond Kimball.
Raymond Kimball, yeah. I wonder why they would keep it out of this particular article.
Is anybody talking about it up there, Julie?
It's in the newspapers. It's on social media. People are talking about it. People, I'm hearing from the shore that people are pretty angry about this because, and I had said this a few weeks ago, I think on here, that, you needed to follow the Sandy money. And it wasn't just the federal Sandy funds. It's the charity that Mary Pat Christie has.
Right.
That all of that money, millions of dollars that was donated after Sandy, was put into a fund, and no one seems to know what's going on with that.
Oh, my goodness. Well, he would definitely do jail time for that. Yeah,
and I just think that that's something that needs to be looked at and paid closer attention to where that money has gone. There were complaints early on that there were a lot of administrators hired by this charity.
Ooh,
so, perhaps another place, to put patronage positions.
Wow. That is so bad that still happens.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at a poll from today where his unfavorability is now at 29% versus 17% a few months ago.
Yeah. It's not it's not going away. And there's more stories every day. Yeah. There was another interview today that I heard with Ben Barlin, who's the fired Hunterdon County prosecutor.
Yes.
Where he said, he found it interesting that Mike Druniak, made this giant fuss about Christie's spokesman made this giant fuss about this being, just the most absolutely ridiculous thing he had ever heard, and that it was silliness, and it was, he just dismissed it. But now the New Jersey Attorney General is trying to put a gag order on Barlin.
Oh.
So he said, they don't. They do not want the
one.
information from this case coming out. There's, if they get access to these documents from when they shut this case down, and they're able to refute it, they don't want that information out there.
Wow. When you say gag order, you're talking about the documents more than Barlin himself. Is that right?
Well, if Barlin gets a hold of the documents, they want to gag him that he's not allowed to speak about what's in them.
I wonder if that right exists when Barlin is no longer an employee of the state. I can see that the documents themselves could be frozen at least temporarily, but I don't see how they can prevent Barlin himself from speaking about them unless there is some law in New Jersey that says that once you've served as a prosecutor, you can't talk about cases you've worked on. But that'll have to be pinned down over time. It's the presence of the case, along with the new Belleville scandal, the new Senator Sweeney scandal, and then the Hoboken scandal, and the lane closure scandal that begins to establish a pattern that's so recognizable that I don't know what steps could be taken to deny culpability in each and every one of these cases.
Yeah.
The emperor has no clothes.
Exactly. Did you see this other? Did you see this other article about the from the New York, New Jersey Baykeeper?
No,
about
I did
the
not.
landfill
What is that?
Project on the there's a landfill project on the Rahway River that's getting fast track approvals from the Christie administration, despite objections of several career staffers at the Department of Environmental Protection. And there's a Maryland company behind the project called Soil Safe, and it has potent political connections to New Jersey. It gave lots of money to Steve Sweeney, and some of the land is owned by the law partner of Ray Lesniak. So that's just another question that's coming up. There have been a lot of DEP issues during the Christie administration. Things that have gotten pushed through. I mean, there's one in my town that is concerning a lot of people. Where
are you at liberty to talk about that?
Yeah, I can talk about that. There's a pond on Lake Street in Ramsey that we call it in town Napolitano's Pond because it was on the Napolitano's property. And I don't know what the official Garrison Pond, I think maybe is what the official name of it is. But there's a county, Lake Street is a county road, and there's a culvert that goes under the road between the pond and the brook that runs out from there, which is maybe the Ramsey Brook. I'm not sure which brook it is, but there's a brook that runs out from the other side of this pond. The culvert has needed to be repaired for years. There's been restrictions to the weight of trucks that could come in Lake Street for many, many years because the culvert was in need of replacement. So back a long time ago, when we were just dumping and letting runoff run, wherever it went, there were upstream from this pond, there were car washes and gas stations, and, everybody just dumped their stuff, and it went into the stream, and it ended up sitting in this pond. So the soil in the pond is polluted. And this project has come up many times. It came up when I was on the freeholder board, and we stopped the project at that time because the pond is now in a corporation that has no assets. So the question came up, who's going to pay for the soil remediation? Mm-hmm. So the project has now, they've decided, they got permits from the DEP somehow to do this project. I guess they had to do the soil remediation. But, the Borough of Ramsey never wanted the project done because they didn't want to be on the hook for the the cost of the soil remediation. The county didn't, when I was there, we didn't feel that it was fair to the county taxpayers to be on the hook for this because it's private property. And the property owners have put the pond in a corporation that has no assets so that they are unable to pay for it, or they're off the hook for paying for it. So now that one of the two brothers that owns that property sits on the Bergen Community College board, that project has finally come to fruition, and it's closed the major artery into Ramsey for a year so that they can replace this culvert and do whatever soil remediation they need to do. So, I don't know what's going to happen with the soil, how long this is going to take, and how much it's going to end up costing the taxpayers of Bergen County.
But does anybody care about the taxpayers in Bergen County?
Well, some of the taxpayers do. And the other added bonus to this is Lake Street comes in and becomes Main Street in Ramsey.
Mm-hmm.
And the downtown businesses in Ramsey, which, we have a nice, thriving little downtown, but they've been through this is the third hit that they've taken. There was a beautification project done about 6 years ago where, although Main Street was open, it was torn up, and all the sidewalks and everything were torn up, so nobody was going to these businesses. One guy impaled himself on a piece of rebar and had to, go to the hospital.
Did you do it on purpose?
No, he got out of his car. He stepped back. He was getting a pizza, and he stepped back, and he ended up, falling backwards and impaled himself on a piece of rebar.
Mm.
And then the guy got back in his car. He, pulled himself off of it, got back in his car, and was going to drive himself home. And, people saw this and called the police, and they tracked the guy down and pulled him over, and, it was a horrible situation. But, there were businesses that some survived, some didn't survive.
Yeah.
The months that the downtown was closed, then the recession came. Again, another round, some of them survived, some of them didn't. These businesses are off by 40%.
Yeah.
Again, for the third time.
Yeah.
Well,
so,
you
lose
Julie.
businesses. Yeah.
What do you think is going to happen to this situation in terms of who's ultimately going to pay for the depollution of the pond, and can you connect this in any way, if only hypothetically, with the Christie scandals?
Well, all I can say is that it's Ramsey, and one of the major players in the Christie scandal is a pretty major player in Ramsey as well.
On which side?
It's time for some traffic trouble in Fort Lee.
Yes. Oh, goodness, I forgot about that. But surely she has been cast aside now. She will never be involved again.
No, but this was all done prior while things were good. So, they were able to get what they – so I think it's a combination of, working together with the governor's office to get these permits done and working with the county executive who has put one of these property owners on the county college board.
Wow. It is so – well, there's a 4-letter word that ends in ED, but I'm not going to say it, but it is very up.
Yeah.
I think that's a 6-letter word.
Well, whatever. I was never very good at math. But what about Todd Christie now? Everybody's been saying to me for the past couple of weeks, follow Todd Christie, and you'll get to the bottom of everything that's rotten in the Christie administration. And now suddenly some staff writers in NorthJersey.com News have come up with a story about Todd Christie, who had invested in real estate near the new PATH station in Harrison.
Yes. Well,
and the Port Authority funded it, $256 million.
Yeah. And also another one of David Sampson's clients who built a very large apartment building right near the Harrison Path station. That was also in that article. So you have Todd Christie, who is, with his partners who are from Harrison, investing in property, buying it prior to the announcement that that station would be redone, and, building new houses, tearing down the old ones, building new houses, and then selling them for, 2 or 3 times what he paid for the property. They paid for the property to start with.
Wow.
After the announcement was made that this path station would be updated. So you've got that. You've got another Samson client. There's a lot. This was a shady deal, and I don't know if you saw Steve Kornacki's report on what happened after Christie canceled the ARC tunnel.
No, I didn't.
That
when
was
did he do
a fascinating piece of journalism. That was on Sunday morning.
Yeah. Oh,
we had all forgotten about the ARC tunnel, and the infrastructure projects that have happened on Christie's watch after that tunnel was canceled.
Yeah.
And all of these projects were funded through the Port Authority. And we're screaming because, now it costs $15 or whatever it is to cross the George Washington Bridge or go through the Lincoln Tunnel. But these
people
projects
should have
are
thought about that.
Yeah, well, that's how this whole Bridgegate thing started.
Oh, gosh.
That's how they had the subpoena power, was because they, they were looking into these fare hikes, and that there not being proper notification to the public about the fare hikes,
if any.
I remember the ARC project very vividly because I was visiting New Jersey and New York frequently during that time, and I remember
he was visiting me.
I admit it. And Christie's decision to nullify the building of the tunnel struck me as counterintuitive from a Delmarva standpoint, because it's so obvious that there's a tremendous amount of traffic that has to go through a small number of lanes on a 24-hour-a-day basis, and to open another tunnel would free up so much space and opportunity to the traffic and create so many jobs. So the commentary here is that perhaps Christie, in deciding not to build the tunnel, was really engaged in, quote, a showy attempt to please the nation's right-wing political class by grandstanding about public finances, while simultaneously sticking his thumb in the eye of liberals everywhere who support new approaches to transportation. So in other words, by rejecting the idea of constructing the tunnel, Christie is saying to Republicans in the center and the right of the party, I'm not going to spend any government money because big government is bad. And he's simultaneously saying, sorry, liberals, I'm not going to do anything to benefit people who need the benefits, because if they need benefits, they can get them without the intervention of government. Mm-hmm. That's the analysis that seems to me to fit the kind of mentality that all these events, scandalous events in New Jersey, pretty clearly reflect, at least if you're looking at it from outside the Republican Party.
And he, at the same time that he was canceling this tunnel, he was working with the Port Authority to fund up all of these other projects to make himself look good. Well, and he's trying to say, I took all of this money that New Jersey had invested in this tunnel, and I put it back into things that we're going to use. And it was so arrogant what he did.
Are you allowed to do that?
Well, he didn't do it. He didn't take that money and use it on something else. He put it into the Transportation Trust Fund, which is supposed to go to other projects. But like most of us who have been watching him for years, we know that every time he takes money from someplace, it goes into the general fund to balance his budget.
Oh, my goodness.
It was like the $22 million when he brought the Board of Public Utilities from Edison into Trenton. They had a fund of $22 million. It was like a goodwill fund. And he took that, and as soon as he pulled them into Trenton, he pulled that money and he put it into his general fund so that he could use that to balance the budget. He's done that with many funds that would help people in need.
That's a lot of chutzpah doing something like that.
Yeah, and, you know, he got away with it because everyone was afraid to cross him. And now that now that people are emboldened, they, you know, every day there's a new story about something else that he and his administration have done.
Well, emboldened is the word, and if I could respond to that particular point, I would mention something that I read again about the state of the power balance in the Assembly and the Senate. But although Christie won the governorship as the model purple state cross-the-aisle governor, a right-winger who's moderate enough to communicate with Democrats successfully, he did not pick, the Republican Party did not pick up one seat in the Assembly or the Senate, despite Christie's gubernatorial success. That resonates with what you just said about the threat. Somehow, every seat in the Assembly and in the Senate froze solid as Christie's star rose. So the people who were voting for the candidates for the Assembly and the Senate were not threatened, so threatened that they all voted Republican because they feared voting Democrat. It's a very complex situation and a very bizarre one. But it seems to me that beneath the surface there are a lot of people who are threatened more because they're involved as potential victims with Christie, potential victims of Christie. What do you think, Margaret?
That's very, very interesting. I was wondering about the other side of things. Julie, why did Christie end the Sandy contract with Hammerman and Gaynor, Inc.? I know they had some problems, but he was very gung-ho about using them.
I don't know, and there hasn't really been much out there other than that the contract was terminated.
Right.
You know, we can surmise why it was terminated. You know, with subpoenas flying, we can surmise that, you know, that maybe that had something to do with it.
Well, with subpoenas flying, we may well find out whether we want to or not.
Yeah.
It's hard to know.
They may have said we're out of this.
Oh.
It may not have been him at all.
Yeah.
They may have seen the subpoenas flying and said, okay, we're done.
Yeah. Wow. And have you guys, before I joined you, have you talked yet about the Rahway site?
No.
No. Apparently, there's a 125-acre site in Rahway. A company called Soil Safe Inc. wants to haul in.
That's what I was talking about before that I had just found.
Oh, it's in Rahway. Oh, not
yeah,
in
it's on the Rahway River.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Let me go back to this.
Oh,
article.
yes, you said New York, New Jersey Baykeeper. Yeah.
And even the DEP staffers, according to this article, even the DEP staffers and the Army Corps of Engineers are concerned about this project.
My goodness. Well, you would think they would have overall say as to, you know, what happens. Surely people have to listen to them.
They're going to, it says here, the plan is to import lightly contaminated soil to build a giant cap on a 125-acre plot of mushy and even more contaminated soil that was left behind by American cyanamide.
Cyanamide? Is that as in cyanide?
Well, it was one of the, American cyanamide is one of the big chemical companies, you know, up there with DuPont and Dow and a lot of the other
DuPont
chemical companies. Yeah.
Oh,
my dad was an executive in the chemical industry.
Oh, really?
Back in the day, yeah. And he was actually a part of the very first group of chemical company executives who got together to try to figure out ways to stop polluting.
Oh, my. He clearly didn't inhale anything because he looked very, very well.
He did, didn't he?
Right up to the...
Even in his box, he looked good.
You know, I was going to say that on the day, but I thought, oh, you know what, that would not be a good thing to say to somebody, but he looked very, very good, Julie.
He did. I said that to the funeral director. I said, you know, he looks great. Thank you so much. He looked terrific.
He did. Yeah, he did actually.
Fuck you,
and looked much, much younger, I think, than probably his real age.
Yeah, he did. All along he did.
Yeah.
Let me weigh in with a comment on a slightly different trajectory. But first let me say that I'm sorry I didn't see your father looking his best, and I wish I had been there for that.
Thank you.
If the scandals proliferate at the rate at which they've been doing in the past 2 weeks, if this were the 18th century of 1776 and Chris Christie was the King of England, then there'd be a revolution within New Jersey. We'd overthrow the king and dump tea into the Hudson River and start new. It has that atmosphere. Do you hear any rumors, Julie, about mob involvement? Just rumors, of course. Obviously, you
rumors,
have no direct knowledge.
I have absolutely no direct knowledge. But there are always rumors swirling around. You know, a lot of them have to do with Atlantic City and how hard he fought to keep the gambling limited just to Atlantic City when the legislature tried to bring gambling to the Meadowlands.
Well, that same tune could be played in a different key to mean that I, Chris Christie, will secure Atlantic City for you, and that will be your playground, and you won't have to get involved in the politics of setting up a new beachhead up north.
Right.
And in return, I want the following favors. I'm beginning to get the hang of New Jersey.
Well, he has, people have said that he's run New Jersey like a mob boss.
Thank you. That you have no idea how good you make me feel in saying just exactly that. How can I thank you, Julie?
Well, that has been something that people up here have said for a very long time.
Yeah, and his uncle was a mobster.
I had heard that, yeah.
Yeah. So, and Christie would go to parties at this uncle's house, and the uncle would come to parties at Christie's house. And when Christie was asked about him when he was running, he said, he's not my uncle. He's just married to my aunt.
He's not blood.
No, exactly.
The other thing that I wanted to mention was the article from the Times today.
Oh, what was
about that? Christie politics. For Christie, politics team kept a focus on two races. It was it's a really well written article. Kate Cernicki and David Chen wrote this article.
Oh.
But it talks about the inner workings of his office and his staff members. And this was the article I sent over to you when you were sitting in traffic earlier, Maggie.
Oh, yes. Yes.
One Republican called it political moneyball, what they were doing.
Wow.
It was very disciplined organization, and they called towns mini Ohio's or mini Floridas. As they pulled these towns together, and they would sit in the governor's office, it says here, and they created tabbed and color-coded dossiers on the mayors of each town, who their friends and enemies were, the policies and projects that were dear to them. And then they were bound in notebooks for the governor to review on his SUV, between events. So these guys would, it was it was spearheaded by Bill Stepien. So basically what they said here was...
And Stepien's the guy he doesn't really know, didn't work very closely with, right?
Stepien was the guy, he came
campaign
from Giuliani.
Manager.
He was the campaign manager who had been his deputy chief of staff. But they said in this article, when he was deputy chief of staff, he didn't report to anyone. He reported directly to the governor. There was no dotted line. It was a direct line from Stepien to the governor.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was fairly obvious. You don't have a campaign manager and then not use him. Pretty bad.
But he came to him from Rudy Giuliani.
Yeah.
Oh,
my goodness.
This article even gives a diagram of the governor's offices in the State House and who sits where, and the close proximity they are to the governor. So basically, what they're doing is they're outlining how there's no way that he would not have known what was going on, because no one did anything. Yeah. No one did anything that he didn't know about.
Yeah, that's obvious, because he keeps such a tight rein on everything. But you just reminded me of something there when you mentioned Giuliani. Christie or somebody close to him is using whatever damage control attorney, PR people that Giuliani used when he messed up big time.
Right.
And Joe Scarborough annoyed me quite a lot over the past week or so, jumping to Christie's defense every chance he got. And some guy emailed me, or messaged me actually on Facebook, I don't know who he is, and said, ask Joe Scarborough why he resigned from Congress. And, he resigned a long time ago, so I didn't remember why he resigned. I may not have ever known why he resigned. So I started to do a little research and discovered that he may possibly have killed a woman he was having an affair with in his office. I mean, not only did she work in his office, she was killed in his office.
Right.
And that whole Chandra Levy thing was going on at the time. So very, very quietly, Joe resigned and hopped out of town while everybody's attention was on Chandra Levy and that congressman from California, Gary, what was his name, Condit or something?
Yeah, Condit.
Chandra Levy.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. So now that he's such a champion of Chris Christie, I'm thinking, look at the two people Christie has in his corner, because Scarborough has admitted that both he and Mika are very good friends with the Christies. So if he's being advised on one hand by a slimeball like Rudy Giuliani, and then by a man who may have committed murder many years ago and gotten away with it, I mean, he can't go wrong, really, can he?
No,
he's going to be president.
Who else was defending him? Was Michael Grimm. Michael Grimm was the first member of Congress.
Somebody last night.
He wanted to throw the guy over the effing balcony last night.
Yeah.
He was one of the first people to come out and defend Chris Christie. Now, he was one of Chris Christie's undercover FBI agents when he was doing his political stings.
That's
so,
right.
That's right. And here's another person with that same kind of a mentality, that violent, angry, if I don't get what I want, heads are going to roll.
Wow. Well, that's kind of immature.
I went back and I looked at the Joe Scarborough, the Scarborough Fair.
Yeah. It sounds good.
And you know, it was interesting. It happened on July 20th, and then you know, as this got pushed back and pushed back and pushed back, I think another reason that it just disappeared was then, you know, September 11th happened. Oh. And nobody was focused on anything but that. And, you know, he probably wiped the sweat from his brow and moved on.
I'm sure he did. Oh, and now 2 wives later and innumerable children, he's, you know, sitting on the top of MSNBC.
Yep.
Is there an honest man left?
Yeah, BB's honest.
Well,
Yep.
Julia, I have to give you so much credit for having so much insight. You achieved a high level of psychiatric insight without bothering to go to medical school and internship and residency and spending decades analyzing people who were in your clientele. So I have to compliment you on that.
Thank you.
No,
it was intuitive. It was intuitive.
It's also highly accurate. But I admit that I come from having watched not only too many westerns, but too many gangster movies and their similar genre, film noir, were full of Christie-like scenarios, only on a smaller scale. And so, based on my cinematic background, I'd have to project that there will be more kidnappings than whacks.
Yeah.
I see people disappearing rather than a body being found 6 months from now. You know, Samson hanging upside down from a tree, no. But Samson suddenly disappearing with a letter saying that I want to spend the rest of my life in Timbuktu, that I think that'd be a little bit closer to it, more Christie style than his brother's style.
We don't know what his brother's style is.
I thought he did.
His brother, you know, he was the person who made the big contributions to George W. Bush and got his big brother this U.S. attorney's job. And, you know, then he was, when everybody around him was indicted, he walked away without any problems at all. Just walked away from it.
Mm-hmm.
And then that U.S. attorney from the Southern District got a $5 million contract from Chris Christie to manage one of those deferred prosecution agreements on the medical device companies.
Oh, my goodness.
You know, and that one kind of got lost because it was only $5 million. It wasn't the $25 million or $35 million that he was going to give Ashcroft, or that he gave Ashcroft.
Wow.
To change tack and play devil's advocate, and to draw upon some political history with which I'm vaguely familiar, I'm not sure that Christie is more corrupt than certain people I would be reluctant to name because they're Democrats.
I would not be reluctant to name them. I don't care if they're Democrats. I really don't. If they're doing corrupt things, if they're involved in any kind of underworld activities, I want to know who they are, and I want them out.
Well, I don't think Lyndon Johnson was involved in the Texas Mafia. I don't think there was much of a Texas Mafia when he was cutting certain deals. But I think Lyndon Johnson cut a lot of deals with a lot of people and did so in a way that didn't come to the surface. And perhaps the difference between Chris Christie and other politicians of the same stripe in both parties in the 20th century in particular, which was a pretty grueling marathon of corruption, is that Christie is not sophisticated enough to keep everything beneath the surface. How could he have made his staff feel that closing 4 lanes would go unnoticed? Did he think that Baroni would be able to succeed with the cover-up involving the, quote, study, unquote? Who thought up that study as a possibly valid cover-up strategy? If it was not Christie, then Christie should have known who was taking the chance of having something like that pop up on the surface. And if it was Christie, then he's terribly naive about how to keep scandal out of the newspapers. It's just about naivete.
Well,
go ahead.
What I've noticed is that I feel like he learned. He watched and he learned when he was prosecuting people as U.S. attorney what people did, how he caught them, and learned from that to try, to try to outsmart the next person, so that he could get away with what he prosecuted of, whether those people were guilty or not. I mean, there were a lot of people that were prosecuted who were not guilty, but were guilty in the court of public opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And he learned, but from the ones who really did stuff, I think he learned. And he was able to be careful enough for long enough. And finally, something stupid like closing lanes at the George Washington Bridge is what shut them down. And they, normally they would have gotten away with this, and they had gotten away with so many of these other things by distracting people so many other times. And for some reason, this one was able to catch fire. I don't know how it was different than so many other things that he should have been called out on and wasn't, but this one caught fire. And it's, it's a silly, stupid thing, an arrogant thing, like sending people to break into the Watergate. It was that stupid of a thing that he got caught up in.
Yeah. Hubris.
Yeah. But, eventually when you're that arrogant, the arrogance will take you down.
Always.
Speaking as a lawyer from the Delmarva area, I look forward into the future, and without a crystal ball, I predict that the election of the next new governor of New Jersey will attract an awful lot of attention nationally. But I think we may be coming close to the end of our time. Margaret, what do you think? Are we nearing that time?
I think we surely are, and I think you should hand over to Julie in case she has any announcements to make, and she can close us up. Over to you, Julie.
Things are still quiet up here in North Jersey, other than the Christie scandal. Politically, things are quiet. I will have my announcement for you in, I hope, 2 weeks.
Yes.
Outstanding.
Yes. Well, we will build a show around that.
Well, I kind of laid a few breadcrumbs tonight.
Good.
So I am putting my team together, and as soon as I have my I'm going to give it away, but as soon as I have my running mates together, as soon as I have the rest of my team together, we'll make the announcement.
Good. That sounds excellent.
Okay.
Right now, you're my choice for the next governor of New Jersey.
Thank you. I don't know if I want the job,
I predict
though.
good things for you. Well,
Thanks.
Give it a little time until Christie's.
Until the stink is off of it.
But I really think that you should close this out, Julie.
Well, thanks everyone out there who has taken the time to come and listen to us tonight. And stay warm, stay dry. It's cold in parts of the country where it's not normally this cold and icy. So stay safe, everyone, and we'll see you next week.
Well said. See you next week, Julie.
Thanks. Good night.
Thanks, Julie. Enjoy the week.
Night.
Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.